Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another transformative episode of Amputate Elevate Success podcast. I'm your host, John Register, two-time two-sport Paralympic athlete, and we're thrilled to be joined by Zara Northover. Oh my gosh, powerhouse in resilience and adaptability. Born in Elmont, New York, makes history by representing Jamaica
Yeah, man.
uh, in the shot puts the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, China. Bird's Nest, we remember it. They had the bird's shoes. I remember getting some of those. Today, she's the CEO of Moving in Faith. She's also working over right now at Hamilton Anderson Associates. It's an architectural firm in Detroit. And Zara, I just want to thank you for coming on. Welcome to the Amputate to Elevate Success podcast.
Thank you for having me. Listen, that was such. I need to record you saying that so I can just get hyped up every time I go somewhere new. So I appreciate that introduction and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So the first question all my guests know I ask is, before we get into all your greatness and all the Olympics and what you're doing to serve humanity right now, what is the one thing that you had to amputate in order to elevate your success?
So this might actually sound un unexpected. I had to amputate my desire to help everyone in order to elevate my ability to not just to help everyone, but also to help myself. It's a
Hey,
lot, and I could
that's a
break it down.
lot. I got to break that one down. So when you say you had to amputate the desire to help everyone, let's unpack that a little bit. What was going on because you were having to help so many people that you weren't able to get done?
So one of the things that I have a therapist, and I actually like to talk about that often because I know sometimes there's a stigma, especially in the African American community, about getting therapy. But I do have a therapist that I meet regularly, and one of the things that I started to notice on my journey was that my defense mechanism was finding someone to fix, helping someone, whether they needed my help or not, or asked for my help or not, but it was just always trying to help. And, some people have a vice of drinking, smoking, having sex, whatever, right? But my vice was seeking out people to help all the time. And in what I realized in conversation was that in helping, others, I was disregarding my own issues, disregarding the fact that I had things that I needed support or help in. So because I was so focused on, well, I've got to do this for this person, whether they asked me to help or not. And
That's
once I
the
started to realize, once I started to realize that I created this defense mechanism of helping, it started to allow me to visualize like I now understand why people say you can't pour from an empty cup. And you have to pause in order to allow someone to help you. You have to pause and allow yourself to ask for the help that you need. And you have to pause to allow yourself to even realize, right? Like that you're in a position of lack when you need support and not just try to find a defense mechanism to ignore that part of you that you may not want to accept.
I have what just came up, and you have no idea about this. I am going to be doing a leadership retreat, leading one on finance and health. And one of the things I would love for you just as an aside, talk to the individuals on the health side, and especially the Black America, where there are some stigmas around it, because we have seen, cases where equitable treatment inside of the healthcare system doesn't naturally fall. So Black women, for example, four times as more likely to have issue during pregnancy than their white counterparts, or syphilis, for black males. So injecting those things. So we have a Henrietta Lacks in cancer. All these things that we have a kind of hard relationship with. You talk about it from the standpoint, to them of why it's so important to take care of your mental health.
So absolutely, and I'm glad that you brought this up. So I worked in corporate for a really long time, in the mortgage industry for about like 8 years, and I'm currently actually in the midst of a racial discrimination and retaliation lawsuit. And it wasn't until the reason why I'm bringing this up, it circles back to the health aspect, is because in this time, right, when you are someone that is a former Olympian that people gravitate to because you're a light and you're powerful and you're respectable and you have energy that people want a piece of, then oftentimes corporations or communities will flock to you, will come to you. They're you're like a magnet, right? So you're attracting all of this energy. So what happens when you're also in that position, though, then you also get used to it, right? Like, so you're used to that happening, that you get these fixes, right? You get these feel good moments. But what sometimes doesn't happen is some days you may come home and you feel exhausted, right? And instead of telling yourself, you know what, I'm going to take tomorrow off, I'm going to take a mental health day, or instead of saying, you know what, I'm not going to go to that event later, right? You start telling yourself, well, I can't afford to because they're expecting me to be there. Someone's expecting me to do this. Like, I have to do this because I'm the only person, right? Like, but then now you find yourself getting a cold and having to stay at home. You find yourself maybe having these headaches in between, like breaks. You find yourself sometimes maybe even having a panic attack, right? Because you've created such anxiousness around everything, right? Like, like around all of that. So ultimately, what I've realized is that sometimes when we're in these positions, we're not focused on ourselves because we've when you're a giver, you're constantly always thinking about giving. So
Yeah.
and then you feel bad when you cannot give. So therefore, in that time, you're not focusing on yourself because you're trying to focus on everybody else. And then that has a negative effect, right? Like, you start to get hurt. Your body starts to break itself down, because the one thing is the body's going to take the rest that it needs to take. So whether you give it rest or it chooses to take the rest, right, it's going to get the rest. And you're better off giving it rest, because it's usually worse when the body chooses to take it on its own. So whether it's getting the checkups, whether it's talking to the doctors, whether it's taking the moment to give yourself the rest that you need, like, we have to do a better job within our community to do so. And we also have to do a better job of holding ourselves accountable, whether it's maybe telling friends and family, like, hey, I give you permission to tell me, sit your behind down.
Y'all heard that. Sit your behind down. Because I've been going on for my body told me to rest because I wouldn't take a break. And so now I still got the head cold and everything. Um, that is really great feedback. I mean, for everybody, but particularly, to those that have been, marginalized, because there does need to be this, you know, I need to show up. I got to be there. It's this press that kind of is this unwritten thing that we have and kind of feel um, about the work or whatever. State that we might be in, and you're right. When you're an Olympian, Paralympian, and you have the eyes on you, there are people that just gravitate to that. They want to know, what is the success? How are you able to be, a representative of your country at this high level, the world stage? And that is an attraction. And that, I think for yourself and myself as professional speakers, it helps, bring in that mindset of excellence, of champions, of just pushing to the extra level. But we do have to take those breaks. We have to take our time and make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. So when you think about your Olympic experience, once you go back into mind, back when you was a teenager, and then,
Hey.
um, what was one nuance about your Olympic experience that you discovered? Something that you thought you knew was going on at the Olympic Games, or you had, but then you had this moment, wow, that's different. Didn't expect that one. Did you have any of those moments that when you were there in Beijing?
So, the question I actually always get, and this leads to it, is like, so is it true? Is it true that people just hook up everywhere, right? Like when you're at the
Oh,
Olympics, And I think for me when I was there, it was always looking out the window, and I'm like, wait, are they together, right? So there were moments where you would see that. But I think the funniest one for me though, actually, was that they talk about going to the Olympics for the first time and almost being like starstruck. So if you don't have somebody kind of giving you the lay of the land of like, hey, it's your first time, but you're gonna see everything. You could eat all you want, you could do all the things, but it's like the freshman 15, but within like a week. So just because the vending machines you could get 30 Snickers doesn't mean you need to go and take 30 Snickers and eat it all. So I do remember the first Olympics that some of the kids were some of the youth on the team along with me, my peers were so excited, so they were just taking the candy, eating the candy, and I'm like, this can't be good. Like I'm a shop owner and I normally eat what I want, but you gotta run a waste. So I think that was probably the thing that really took me by surprise, because you know that you have access to everything, but it's a different space to like walk in and watch somebody go get new glasses or go get an MRI done or get their teeth cleaned. And because the Olympic Village really has everything.
everything. I was two kind of quick stories. That's why I'm, leading up to what LA 2028 coming up now. Is because I had the Olympic experience, right? And all my people that I ran with in college, they're all going to the Olympics. And then I went to Paralympics. I was asking them, so what's the village like in Atlanta, right? All that stuff. So I was trying to get the intel, and I was really sorely disappointed in Atlanta because they didn't have equity with inside of treating the Olympians, the Paralympians to the Olympians. In fact, we didn't even
Mm.
have a food sponsor until like 2 months out
Oh,
because
wow.
the food sponsor would not give first right of refusal over to somebody else, and we had to go find our own keys for our rooms. The beds were all turned up and everything. So then I was thinking about the same thing that's going to happen for Sydney, Australia. Wrong, 180-degree flip. It was the most amazing experience that I ever had
I'm
in my
glad.
life. It was such a powerful, and it showed me, the disparities and why do we have this. So I'm really hoping that LA 2028 brings it because we didn't really welcome the world very well in 1996 to America for Paralympics. So we should have a great celebration here. And plus, it's elevated. There's a lot of things that are going on now. So I really appreciate what you said. But and that was funny, man. The first thing you get in your whole packet is like a roll of condoms,
You gotta be safe.
and I'm like, I'm
Gotta
like,
be
dude,
safe.
I'm married. I'm married. I don't really. We don't care. We don't care. So we're gonna give you these. So that was kind of crazy. But thanks for sharing that. Adapting to shifting markets. I want to talk a little bit about Hamilton Anderson. You've made the transition. What was your transition like from sport to the corporate world? How did you manage that?
So I attacked the transition. So I think that I always have to remind people like when it was harder for my counterparts that went to like the major schools where everything was given to them, right? Like, you woke up and you had a new bag of gear, you had all the things, but I did go to, Northeastern University in Boston, Division I program, but it wasn't a high profile sports school. I didn't have everything I absolutely needed. At one point I think I was using marker on a regular t-shirt to make myself a uniform, right? But I still showed up and I still made nationals. But because of that,
Sponsor
I
me. Sponsor me.
that's actually how Moving in Faith got birthed, but we'll get to that. But because I had to hustle my way as an athlete, always had a hustle mentality. So I had to work and play. I wasn't just getting paid to play, right? And that is so it allowed me to transition from being a professional athlete and just an athlete to corporate a lot smoother because I was willing to take risks. I was willing to do whatever it takes. Like, I mean, I applied 77 times to one of my first real corporate jobs at Quicken Loans, now formerly known as Rocket Mortgage, because I had to like prove myself and say, hey, like I'm amazing. You should hire me. It was to the point where I literally went to an event, found out the CEO is there, chased them down the street, and I said, I'm Zara, and I've been applying to your job over and over and over again. And it was shortly after that that I got the job, but it took that level of persistence. And I don't know if you would have gotten that from everybody, but somebody with an Olympic mindset and pursuit, absolutely. We have that within us. And that's usually what I encourage friends that are making that transition or nervous about their transition. I'm like, that we have something innate within us that a lot of other people don't have. And we have to activate that because anything we put our minds to, we can do.
I love the word persistence, and I like it because I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and he always talks about being persistent and having a definite purpose in life. So most athletes have that. They get tunnel vision on what they want to do and how they want to achieve it, and then but they're quick to get off it too. So they do something totally different to give space. When you look at your transition and you are now showing up in the corporate space, what do you think is missing in the corporate world that is not in, or maybe in the athletic world, that they might be missing to help them solve problems, like maybe transportation issues, hiring practices, those things that they're facing with every day, market changes, market shifts. What do you think is the one thing that is missing for executives?
Executives are missing being the coach, right? Like, I think the biggest difference between a successful athlete is not that that you're just talented. You have a lot of talented people out there, but when you match that talent to a coach that's willing and just as persistent to develop you to the point where coaches will take you on as an athlete and not even get paid, right? Like, like because they see something within you. We don't have that. A lot of corporate opportunities and companies are missing that dynamic of leadership because, you have to meet people where they are, see the skill sets and where they are and foster that, right? If let's look at football, right? Like, since we're kind of in the realm of football right now,
Right, right,
if
yeah.
we see that someone is came in as a wide receiver, but they have the ability to go and be a running back, and there's a need, then you might say, "Hey, I know that you've been a wide receiver and you're great at being a wide receiver, but right now the team, right? The team needs you to be here." And I think that this is going to allow you to amputate, right, and elevate into a whole new atmosphere that's going to really catapult you and this team, right? And when that person locks in with you as a coach and says, "You know what, let's give it a try," because as an athlete, we're all willing to do what it takes to win, right? Like, and we want, and especially if you're a team player and on a team, you want to be able to support your team. So if the coach though sees that this is the missing link and sees that you have the skill sets to really take it off, then that's where it's a dual dynamic. And oftentimes in corporations and businesses, we may see, right, people have these skills, but we're like, no, we hired them to do
Mhm.
HR. So we're gonna leave them in HR. Even though they're a great salesperson, but we hired them to do this, and I don't want to deal with like the havoc of having to train somebody to do something else and all these things. Or maybe we have somebody that's struggling in sales, but they're really great with people, and we should move them from being in sales to being with people. We don't like making those shifts sometimes for whatever reason in corporate. Like, it's like, this is my lane, this is your lane, and we're not going to communicate to make sure that we can put the perfect team together, right? And I think that's the thing that I've noticed now, having worked in a couple different dynamics, where I'm like, you have to be willing to coach, and you have to see the greatness in the team that you have and their abilities and foster on that, whatever it is. And I look forward to, like, that's what I focus on now. Is I'm not afraid to approach leaders and say, hey, like, John over here is actually really good at this. And right, like, we really should consider giving him an opportunity, because the thing is, after a while, John is going to get bored, and either John might leave, and now this corporation lost somebody that was a star, right? But just because we didn't want to actually foster his talents.
Yeah, so many thoughts going on in my head right now. Personal, I'm having trauma right here, so this not really, but that's a lot with when I was working for the committee, right? And I had these skill sets that no one really knew how to move them. And I was young, as an athlete, yeah, I was able to maneuver, but not a really great coach to help, drive my talents. So I would help athletes tell their journey stories as a professional speaker. I had great communication skills to be able to navigate different rooms from to build programs and get what I found discovered was to get the right and the left talking together to advance a program, to do other things as well, to be in front of the Princess Diana Fund and all these things that moved these programs forward. But still, I was locked into some of these other areas where maybe we could craft out something else that's different. And I think you're exactly right. How do we look at an HR person looking at the talent of somebody and then skills transfer it to what the needs of the organization. You said something else. You used my amputate to elevate. Thank you very much for putting that in there. We are talking to Zara Northover. She is phenomenal. The Jamaican man. She is uh you're a two-time Olympian or just the
No,
for
just one time, just
just the one
one
time
time.
to 2008 Beijing, and she is just dropping nuggets right now on us. As you look at your leadership philosophy, how has it evolved over the time? So, what is it, and how has it evolved to where you are? I love what you're saying right now about we got to level up and be more looking at how we can offer ourselves as coaches.
And that's what led me to that next phase. So this is a great question. So remember how we talked about I had to amputate my ability to want to help everyone in order to be able to elevate myself, to be able to help myself and everyone even more.
Right.
And that's because leaders need coaches too, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like leaders also need to be poured into. So sometimes and I'm tying them all together, whether from a leader aspect in corporate or a captain aspect on the team or a leader also being a coach of a team. At the end of the day, we also need personal and professional development because you could only coach as far as you, right, understand, know,
Right.
and have the scope to. And that's when I actually started to realize, like, you look at your coaches sometime and you think, like, oh man, they're so amazing. And then you're like, wait, they're also human, right? Like, so they're coaching me and they're coaching maybe 50 other kids on the team, right? Like, and I have problems one day and I'm venting about my hair not looking good, like right, like, and I'm like, this coach is listening to everybody and their problems. Like, who listens to their problems, right? Like, and sometimes it's the same thing in corporate settings. And what happened was I've always been that girl. I was that girl in high school that got along with all my teachers. So, right, I was the young, they always say I had an old soul, like, even when I was really young. And same thing in corporate, even just coming in, like I just really got along with so many different leaders that they would vent to me or they would share with me. And that's when I would start to realize like they need support also. And unfortunately, what happens is sometimes you get put into a leader category and then it's like, all right, you're the boss, so figure it out, right? Like there's no professional development support. How do you deal with this situation or a unique situation? And so what I love that's starting to happen now is there are more forums, right? There's executive coaches and different things like, like that resources for people to connect together so they could provide that support to one another because you cannot help someone grow if you're at your wits end as well. You're only as good as one of my old strength coaches you'd say, you're only as good as your weakest link, right? Your weakest muscle. So therefore you have to work on all the parts of you. And if that part of you is like your mental, which is it looks like it's the weakest, something like it's not that it looks like it's the weakest, like, but it's invisible, right? You don't see it, your mind isn't a muscle that you could see. So sometimes you really have to position yourself because it is the strongest part of you. Because if your mind's not right, nothing else is.
Right. The so much. I wish we had so much time to unpack all that because that was juicy, juicy. The professional development. Uh, it's in my renewal part of my model, and I have this RE power to the three resilience transformation model, action model. And what I talk about is this reckoning, revision, and renewal. And in the renewal, it begins with this rebirth. And you're exactly right. In the rebirth, of when we try something new for the first time after we have made a commitment to it, we're no longer the expert. Uh, when I had the amputation, there have been millions of amputees before me, but it's new for me. I have to now learn how to walk all over again. So I'm no longer an expert in walking any longer. I have to go on the walker, on the crutches, on a cane, all these things helping me learn to get back to a level of excellence. Tiger Woods, he when he wants to change up his golf swing, right? He no longer puts himself in the expert level. He goes back to work on something that will give him greater access for his swing. We do it as athletes, right? We might have a mistake that we're making. We got to go back, retrain the muscle memory so that it comes out during our throws, jumps, sprints, uh, whatever we're doing on in the track. So when you're looking at that as far as the professional development and giving yourself space and grace to grow, is that what you are seeing? That is a need still for our community of CEOs or C-suite leaders?
Absolutely. Like you have to be able to look in the mirror. Like, and really not just look in the mirror so you could fix your hair, but look in the mirror and look at your eyes, look at yourself to be able to either say good job or get it together. Right? You got some work to do. And you have to be able to be that honest with yourself, right? We don't praise some people don't so some people suffer from not praising themselves enough. Right? Some people suffer from not being right, what is it, never always hungry, never satisfied, right? And sometimes it's like, no, you need to be able to learn how to pat yourself on your back, right? But there's some people that also need to look at the mirror and say, I shouldn't have said that to that person, right? I might be just too stressed out that I can't even be empathetic, like with my team because I'm not even dealing with my own issues and I've got to fix this. They can't fix this because I'm not even telling them, right? I need to be able to be transparent with me. And so therefore it is, and when you're able to allow yourself to get to that point to see yourself, that's when you're going to even allow yourself to get the help that you need, right? Like, because you're going to be able to say, I need, whether it's a executive coach to hold you accountable, or you need a therapist to really do some inner healing work of some things that have been bothering you or triggering you that you're unaware of, right? But you have to just allow yourself to say, there's chaos around me and I'm not happy, or maybe there's nothing but success around me and I'm not happy. Because if you're not happy in either of those scenarios, then clearly there's something wrong and you have to be able to address that.
Yeah, that's so good. When I'm thinking about, just going back to what you said initially on self-care, we can't pour in others unless we're taking care of ourselves first. Those are some really, I think, big challenges that we have discovered, and outcomes of it has been, I think, for the most part, really loneliness. That people feel isolated. They feel as if they cannot talk to anybody, and so that it exasperates on who they become as this leader, and they're not taking care of themselves, even though they're being demanded to take care of their teams. So when you look at that in this turning point, um, how do we what's a solution that you might see for getting us to, of course we have to recognize that it's going on with inside of ourselves, and maybe there's some triggers that we can see and we're snapping on people, or we get to the house and we're out, uh or like me, I'm in front of this computer like way too long, every single day, and I got to get up and I get my exercise. What are some things that we can actually do to A, identify that we're having some of these behaviors so we can stop doing them, and then B, inserting some positive behaviors to help
Absolutely.
ourselves and our
This
team?
is a great question. So So for me, one of the things you'll see me wear is a chain that says "Moving in Faith." Right, "Moving in Faith" is actually the brand that I'm the CEO over. It's a global empowerment brand. It's a reminder brand, right? Faith, from a spiritual biblical standpoint, means being certain of the uncertain, right? Because at the end of the day, life is uncertain, right? The only thing promised is that at some point you're gonna die, right? But the reality is, like, we have a path that we're able to take on that journey. So when I feel anxious or stressed or anything, like, having these affirmations and positive things around my house and on my body, or, like, I mean, like, in some capacity, whether it's a bracelet, I'm able to look at something and then just quickly remind myself, snap myself back into reality, that, like, I just have to keep moving in faith, right? Faith, like, Rome isn't built in a day. I'm not gonna, right? I just have to keep taking the next step. I'm looking at a sign as we are speaking right now in my kitchen that says, "A man is not a failure because he tried and failed, but because he fails to try," which was, my father ingrained that into all of his kids, into all of us. And but it's all these positive messages that will align myself to, like, say, okay, what, and then I could pause, and then I could say, what do I need to do in order to move forward with where I am at the moment. Because we have to acknowledge where we are. So I reminder things, whether it's writing stuff down, having stuff on you, something that you could see is important. Then it's also like you have to have a peer champion. A peer champion, what I call a peer champion, is someone that you are very close with, that you are talking about your day to day. You're giving them that authority within your life, right? To be a supporting role in your life. You're saying, hey, if you see me going down a path of talking negative all the time or acting outside of my character, I really need you to just say, Zara, like, I love you, but you've been a little mean lately, right? I love you, but something's a little off. Like, what's really going on, right? Because sometimes that break is kind of what people need. Some people go towards journaling. Another thing I like doing is, I'm a traveler, so I'm gonna have, these 4 or 5 trips, planned a year, that I'm able to then, like, be looking forward to something, right? So when I'm scrolling, I might be scrolling on TikTok or Instagram from time to time, looking at pictures of in Bali, or, like, Jamaica, or all the things. So therefore, it's like there's these positive things I'm looking forward to, but then it also resets myself, like, all right, how am I going to get the money to pay for this? Right? Okay, what do I need to do to make sure I'm realigned so I can do the things I need to do to get back on track so I could go on my vacation in peace, right? So it's
Right.
it's just really kind of, what do you need? What excites you? What's going to cause you to stop, reflect, and refocus and move forward?
We set the last year in October, we set the entire year for this year, and we built in the breaks so that we take the breaks,
That's awesome.
because we need to reset, right? And I think that's one of the things you're saying with their taking ownership of who you are and how you need to, show up for yourself so you can actually show up for others. I have one last question for you, which is balance. And how are you? Let me caveat this by saying, I don't necessarily believe in the balance of it, because I think we're always moving to try to stay on balance. Even if me trying to sit up in this chair, my body is fighting forces to keep me upright. But when we talk about the terms of our priorities of what we're doing, how is it that you can juggle so many roles? You got the CEO, the speaker, the mentor, your faith, all these things. How is it that you, Zara, find that kind of equilibrium, or ways to put it all together?
I'm smirking because I love this question. I had prepared a speech on, I don't talk about workplace balance anymore. I talk about work life harmony, right? You mean, like, you have to be harmonious in your life, in your decisions, and the things that you do. At some point, yeah, like, it may be that you're gonna be 80% in the grind, right? For this moment, but and 20% and hopefully in some sort of rest, right? And restoration. But at some point, then you're going to say, okay, I know that I'm grinding until March, but come March, I'm going to have this next break and then I'm going to be able to stop, reset and refocus and move forward, right? So it's really just making sure that you know that everything that you're doing is aligned with your purpose and the plans that you have for your life. I'm actually getting ready to do a TED Talk February 22nd in Boston. And one of the things that I talk about in my talk, I won't give it away, but one of the things that I say is that, you could either be the main character of your life or you could be the supporting character in your life, right? I mean, like in not in somebody else's life, supporting somebody else, but it's like, why give somebody else the opportunity to be the main character in your life, right? Like you have to be the main character in your life, and you have to allow others to support you, not the other way around, right? And ultimately, if you don't choose yourself first, if you don't allow yourself to do the dance, to feel tired, to feel excited, to feel happy, to feel sad, to feel mad, right? Then are you really living?
Yeah, that part, that part, that part. Um, what have I missed? Because this is it's a lot.
I
like
know. We'll
like in
definitely have to talk
Hamilton
again.
when Hamilton Thomas Jefferson came back, from France. And, what did I miss?
No, I mean this I'm just so grateful that you've created a platform to have these conversations because, there's not enough, right? Like it's one of those things where if 10 people listen to this platform, then those 10 people needed this platform, right? And it'll continue to grow. But, ultimately we're flowing, and that's what this is. It's all about conversation. It's all about picking each other's brains, sharing knowledge. Like it does say biblically, our people perish for lack of knowledge. So, right, if we're as long as we're sharing the knowledge, and we're truly moving in faith, right, being certain of the uncertain, we're certain that the only thing that we are promised is that one day we will have an expiration date, right? But the life we choose to live, right, like up until that point, is ours, and we have a choice always to try to figure it out, to make a different decision. If something doesn't work out, then to think and try to think, what else can I do? And sometimes if it doesn't work out, maybe it wasn't supposed to. Maybe there is something you're learning in the very moment that you are, and it will make sense later.
Powerful words from a powerful woman, Zara Northover. Thank you so much for being on. How do people get in contact with you? What's the best way?
At Zara Northover on Instagram and Zara Northover on LinkedIn. But you could definitely contact me on those platforms. I'm checking them all the time and I'm updating them all the time. So, I do look forward to connecting with people, and I'm always here.
We're going to make sure that we have your LinkedIn in the show notes, so that it's very short show notes. I'm just gonna let you,
Oh, that's
but
fine.
have your LinkedIn in there to make sure that people can connect with you. Thank you so much
You're
for being
welcome.
on today for Amputate to Elevate Success podcast.